Hey guys, and welcome to this quick video in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and today I'm basically going to show you what my sensitivity settings are when using the flight simulator. This is a question I get asked a lot of the time because people obviously want to try and set up their peripherals correctly and maybe need a little bit of guidance on how mine are set up and how they work in the simulator. So what you first need to know about my setup is I have two different devices that I use to fly Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. Of course, I fly the Airbus almost exclusively. So if we just pop into the controls menu, you can see that I do have the Cytec Pro flight yoke, which is not only a flight yoke, but it also comes with three individual thrust levers, which originally were designed for the Cessna. So you've got a throttle. I've got one assigned to the throttle, one assigned to the spoilers, one assigned to the flaps. Now the thrust lever really is the only one that we really need to take any notice of. And because of the way the thrust levers work in the A320, you obviously know we have toga power, we then have the MCT thrust, we then also have the climb thrust detent, and the two that are used most of the time are obviously toga power and the climb thrust, as well of course as that is idle throttle. So this is all focused on the joystick L axis Z. The moment you can see that ball moving now, so that is considered to be toga power. So the moment my thrust levers are right at the top. So the reason that we've reduced the sensitivity on this line here is because as we then pull it back, we then get to MCT thrust around here, and then we've got the climb thrust around about here, and you can see just the way the sensitivity is set, it actually jumps around a little bit, but because we've reduced the sensitivity there, it means that we don't get the thrust levers clicking in and out of that detent, which was a problem I did have when we first got the simulator. So other than sort of like the first three detents, toga, MCT, and then climb thrust, which is, I say, it's really hard to gauge just at looking at this menu, but basically because we've got reduced sensitivity here, it means we can move through those detents quite freely when flying the Airbus A320. Of course, that is just for the A320. Everything else, I would have the sensitivity set rather differently. Of course, coming down to idle throttle, well, that's quite straightforward. We don't need to mess about with that. So idle thrust is right down at the bottom, and yeah, that's self-explanatory. But certainly if we're doing the A320, I would look at just curving this arc a little bit so that you've got smoother run through the top portion of your thrust lever. Okay, so if we come away from that, and now for the side stick. As you can see, it's just one that's not actually recognized by Microsoft Flight Simulator itself. It's just a normal side stick, Logitech I believe. If I go to the sensitivities here, and now here we can see some quite different settings. So we've got the X axis, which is obviously left and right. We've got up and down on the Y axis. This axis here is actually another thrust lever on my side stick, which I do not use and do not touch for obvious reasons, because I've got the thrust levers next to me. And then we've got the rudder, which is axis Z. So if we just have a little look at how I've set these up, the main important thing is the dead zone in the middle of all of these, and that is so if I rest my hand on the side stick, which I'm doing now, you can see very slight movements taking place, so the computer's receiving those inputs, but it's not going to affect the plane moving left, right, up, down, etc., because these are dead zones, so it effectively takes no notice of anything while those little balls are within that flat dead zone. In terms of going left and right, I've kind of decreased the sensitivity a little bit because it was oversensitive, or I found it to be oversensitive, as you can see here. But one of the main things is making sure that you've got these the same over here on the y-axis, just so that left and right feel the same both sides. You obviously don't want one to be more sensitive than the other, otherwise it becomes a little bit more difficult to control. The y-axis, again, you just want to have not too much there. Otherwise, what I was finding is that's sort of where I'm holding the aircraft for flaring. If we hadn't reduced the sensitivities, what I tended to find there was that you were actually flaring. The ball was somewhere up here, which meant that you were really pitching quite far up, and you get that floating effect, which obviously we try to avoid. So that's it really, and the rudder settings as well, just again making sure. What I found with these is they were very sensitive, so if we just taper those off a little bit for moving left and right, because obviously full left and full right is right up at the top, but I do have to work hard if I want that full rudder input, which is good because you don't want to do that by mistake. So yeah, basically that's a snapshot of my sensitivity settings. There's very little more I can say about that. The only thing that I would say is really pay attention to the dead zones. Pop your hand on your side stick, see how they're moving naturally, and adjust those accordingly. After that, any sensitivities you make to one side, up or down, make sure, or left or right, make sure that they are both equal, so you're getting equal pitch and roll regardless of which side you're putting an input into. Okay, so very quick video, but I know many of you have been asking for my sensitivity settings, and I hope that explains a little bit more than a quick picture. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you all again soon.